going to be playing a little trivia here in just a minute. Just kind of finishing out the tests, and I wanted to tell one little funny story real quick before we get started. So, people who know me know that I'm pretty much a do-it-yourselfer. I have a house, and when things go wrong in the house, I always like to try to fix it myself if I can. I pride myself in being able to fix most things that go wrong. I mean, I know some electrical, some plumbing. I know air conditioning because my dad was an air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration business guy. He ran his own business doing those repairs. And when I was a kid, he'd take me with him, and I was the gopher for a while. I'd like bring the tools and the flashlight and all that. But pretty soon as I got older, he'd be like, okay, I'm going to have you do this job, or we'd work together and we'd replace a compressor in an outside unit, or we'd go up to the furnace in the attic and we would work on the evaporator coil, or maybe some electrical issue with the 24 volts on the thermostat, something like that. So little by little, I came to learn and understand all the air conditioning, the parts of the system that make the air conditioner work. And I had a problem that happened a few weeks ago, and I thought, oh, well, this is air conditioning related. I'll be able to knock this out easy, right? Well, what happens is your furnace up in the attic, especially when it starts getting warm like it is now in Texas, will start to run more and more, right? To get the AC at the level where you want it. And the main part of the furnace that does the job of the cooling is the evaporator coil, or what's called the heat exchanger. And there is, HVAC can be no fun if you only know a little bit, just enough to get in there, but not enough to fix it. Well, I know most things, but I still make mistakes like I did this time. So that evaporator coil, that heat exchange, when the Freon, the refrigerant is changing out hot for cold, taking the hot to the outside unit to get blown away by the fan, and it's changing it into cold to be used for the air that's going throughout your house. That heat exchange causes condensation all around the coil, But the engineers who built air conditioning systems knew this, and they're like, well, we better build a pan or something underneath to catch it, because if not, all this condensation is going to drip off, and it can literally get into your insulation. It'll drip onto the ceiling. It'll make spots on your ceiling. Nobody wants that, right? So they came up with this really good idea. Let's put a pan underneath the evaporator coil, so all that condensation's happening. It'll drip into there, and we'll just run a little PVC pipe over to the side of the house, and there'll be like a little pipe sticking out of the eave of your house, and it'll drip the water out to the outside, and you almost never see that little pipe that sticks out because it's on that side of your house that you probably never go and look at because you don't need to, right? Maybe once a week when you mow, you might look up and see it, okay? That's your primary drain for when there's water condensation. Yeah, it'll go through the house and it'll eventually exit on a side and dump to the outside. Now, what they did was they said, what happens if that thing plugs? If that thing gets stopped up, the water's going to back up and it's going to still spill everywhere. So they made a secondary drain, but they were smart with the secondary one. They're like, let's not put it somewhere where they won't see it. Let's put that one somewhere where it'll, they'll notice it, and it'll maybe cause them some problems because it's going to drip all over something they shouldn't. Well, my secondary goes right out to my patio and right over some chairs where people sit, when we're hanging out in the patio. And it usually never drips because as long as the primary is nice and clear, that water can get out where it needs to go and drop. Well, mine got plugged, and it happens. You get like dust and dirt that kind of falls into the water of the pan, and it can eventually plug up your primary somewhere along the way. When that happens, the water goes to the secondary. The secondary pipe is like a little bit higher on the pan than the primary, and when the water starts backing up, it's like, well, I can't go down the primary. I guess we'll go this other way, right? Well, that's why there's a primary and a secondary in every system, because usually by the time you catch it on the secondary, you have time to go up and unplug the primary. So that's what happened to me, right? I started having drips out in the patio, getting all over the chairs and stuff. So I put a bucket there to catch it, and I'm like, okay, next time it's not hot, I'll go up into the attic and I'll take my little air compressor and I'll blast out that primary. That's usually what my dad would do when he was clearing those. So that's what I did. Now, what's interesting is on that primary, there's a little tiny piece that comes out of the drain pan, and then it takes a bend, and then I usually put like a little coupler there with a screw. And the reason is you can unscrew it and uncouple it, and that way you have a place that you can put your air when you can blast down the long part that goes all the way to the side of the house and out, right? So that's what I did. I put my air in there and I blasted it, and it did sound plugged. I heard it like really struggling at first. Then all of a sudden I hear the whoosh, and then everything's clear. And now I'm squirting air in there, and it just sounds like it's going fine, no problem, right? So I'm like, all right, I cleared it. I'm good to go. Problem was, it wasn't hot that day. The air conditioner wasn't running much. So I was like, well, I guess I'll see when it gets hot again what happens. So when do you think it got hot and the air conditioner was running a whole lot again? Today, actually, just like an hour or two ago. So I'm just about ready to start doing the stream and all that, and all of a sudden the water's like flooding out that secondary drain into my patio again, and the bucket's like completely full, and it's like dripping over and getting everything all wet, and I'm like, what happened, So I immediately get the bucket and empty it out, and I put it back so it can start collecting on the secondary again. And I go up there, and it's hot this time because it's like 6:30, it's been hot all day. So I go up there and I decouple it again, and I take my compressed air and I put it down the long tube, and it's completely fine. It's like open. It's like, whoosh, nothing's blocking it. And I'm like, what is going on? So I'm just like staring at it. I can't figure out, and I can see the water like stacking up in the pan. I understand why it's going down the secondary, but I'm like, what? And then I realized that tiny little stub that goes from the pan to the little bend before it connects to the coupler, that's what was plugged up. That tiny little piece. I never would have guessed, right? So I put my hand on the end of that stub so I block the air, and I put the air into the other little thing that like blasts going back towards the pan, and I shot the air, and sure enough, all this like wool and crap blew out from where the water was trying to get in, and it unplugged it from that little part. And I made sure to get that cloggy stuff out of there and throw it to the side. But now I had to hurry up because now the water's like, hey, we're free. We can go down the primary. But of course, I don't have the primary connected back to the long tube yet. So it starts just like coming out all over me, like my shorts and the ground. I'm like, oh crap, So I'm trying to hurry up and get the long piece and the coupling piece and put it back onto the primary. And luckily I was able to do that before all of the water completely drained out all over me. And I was able to get that connected and put the screw back in. And now it's going where it's supposed to go, out the primary. So got it all put back together, got my compressor and stuff down out of the hot attic finally. Turned all the lights off, closed it up, and I walked out to the patio, and sure enough, that little secondary pipe was still dripping, but it was a lot less. And after about another, oh, hey, Redfire, thank you so much for the host. I really appreciate it. Yeah, Mom, tell Dad that well, first tell him I made a stupid mistake, that I didn't blow both directions of the pipe like he always said I should. I only did the long part, which I figured was where it was clogged. But now I know. That is the funny story, Berto. What are you talking about? I don't know. It was funny to me. Maybe